talk about that some more?
Yeah, this was something that floated in, and we're getting lots of good ideas, right? So we've created an environment in our office to accept and kind of aggregate as many good ideas as we can. And so a statewide grand jury would be an idea that would allow the Attorney General to initiate the process, I believe is how it's been described, to launch a grand jury to be able to identify some sort of be able to investigate some sort of potential election fraud in some sort of local jurisdiction. Just gives the opportunity to remove any sense of local politics out of that initial equation.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hi, Lieutenant Governor. Do you foresee any opportunity for progress on law enforcement reform, maybe addressing citizens arrest law this session?
I do. I think there's an opportunity for us to gain great momentum on last year's was the hate crimes bill, which I got to tell you, standing here, I've got to stand here 100 times in the first 2+ years. That was probably the proudest moment, knowing all the amount of cumulative work, the bipartisan effort that went into that. I think there's opportunities to gain on that momentum as we move forward. I certainly know that Senator Cowsert, I believe, had a study committee that he's pulled together, and look forward to getting input from him as we kind of try to navigate through a couple of those opportunities to, I think, continue to make improvements.
So would you like to see any changes to the citizens arrest law specifically?
Yeah, I think there's an opportunity to make some progress there. I think that directly addresses what we saw in the Ahmaud Arbery case that was just the tragic catalyst for a terrible moment. So certainly I think there's an opportunity to make a huge improvement there for Georgians. And I anticipate that an overwhelming number of Georgians expect us to take that position. Yeah, thank you.
So we haven't seen a bill filed on the Senate side yet, but on the House side, there is a movement for sports betting. What is your position on moving forward with allowing sports betting in Georgia?
Yeah, so case law currently makes sports betting legal here in Georgia, in every state in the country. And so this is an opportunity for us to have a discussion about how we, what guardrails do we put around it? What are the unintended consequences that we want to try to eliminate? For me, one of those is near and dear, and as a former college athlete, I don't want, if I have the ability to kind of steer this, I don't want college athletics to be bet on. I just don't think that puts 18 to 21-year-old athletes in the best possible position, and certainly want to look for an opportunity to remove them. I think it also gives us an opportunity to capture, if it's legal to sports bet, then it is an opportunity for us to be able to use some of those funds out of there to direct towards HOPE, which has been an overwhelming success. My family has been a beneficiary of HOPE as my wife and I were growing up, and now we have a son in college who's a beneficiary of HOPE. So I think it's an opportunity for us to be able to target those.
And I know you've previously said that you're against casino gambling or horse racing. Is that still the case?
Yeah, I think they're completely separate conversations. And some folks have asked, the sports betting element right now, how is it different than years past? I think folks have finally just brought sports betting as a standalone issue that's not a constitutional amendment. Casinos and horse racing are constitutional amendments that ultimately, at the end of the day, if the will of the legislature, which I don't sense that there's the will of the legislatures here, I don't really sense that it's the will of the people at this point. But ultimately, if that becomes the will of the legislature at some point down the road, then ultimately, as a constitutional amendment, it would be put out in front of the people, and they would have an opportunity to vote on it. But I don't sense there's any energy behind any of that during this period of time, during this session.
The Senate passed some rules in regards to safety measures for coronavirus. Is required testing part of those rules?
We have been fortunate to have great participation from the Senate. We have, quite honestly, I've not reached deep into what the rules are. I know that we've got huge support. We're well over 90% of folks that were leading up to this week. We expect probably to see 100% participation. I just, as I said earlier in my comments, I cannot highlight the level of personal responsibility wrapped around that testing. It allows us to operate safely. It allows us to have, some of the folks that are testing positive occasionally, sporadically, are ones that have, a majority of them don't even have symptoms, but then later go home to have those symptoms. So really, really grateful. Not certain of the exact technicalities of it. We haven't really necessarily had to dig deep into that, just because of the broad participation by just about everybody that I know inside the Senate.
And there was a House member today that was escorted from the House for not following those rules. Would you ever see that as a possibility in the Senate if it comes to that, where you don't have members complying with any of the safety measures?
I've not seen any details of the situation that you mentioned, and I certainly hope we never have to anticipate that. I don't anticipate us having to go that route. Thank you.
Some of the Republican leadership in the Senate has called for getting rid of the drop boxes for absentee ballots. Is that something you would support doing this?
We've heard it mentioned. I think there's pros and cons that are, and I think we're going to have this process of walking it through committee and understanding what those pros and cons are as far as absentee ballots. And look, I want to make sure everybody understands. We're going to try to represent as many. 5 million people voted in this election, in the presidential election, and then a slightly lesser number in the runoff. But we're going to try to be as broadly representative of everybody who's out there voting, and so we'll put those on the scale for sure.
And just a quick follow-up. Given that some of the leadership in the Senate has called for some of these things like no excuse absentee voting, getting rid of that, which you are saying that you don't support, do you see any tension there in terms of trying to navigate some waters with working with leadership in the Republican Party in your chamber?
Yeah, so I don't sense any. We have a great working relationship. We meet at least once a day. Certainly, we're trying to work through and have the best, the best working relationship we can, but ultimately create the best work product. And to me, that's really the attitude that we've got really just flowing through the veins of the Senate. And that's the part that gives me the most comfort, is even on the tough stuff that maybe there isn't 100% agreement with, we have a great working relationship. I anticipate this being one of those issues where we create a solid work product that an overwhelming majority of Georgians agree with.
One more question on election reform. We've heard about the counts, the recounts, the signature audits, and no reports of widespread fraud. So in your efforts to move election reform, what problems are y'all trying to solve, or what are you trying to solve specifically when you're looking through this legislation?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And the answer is I don't necessarily identify a problem that we're trying to solve. I think this is an opportunity I don't know if I've ever been, this is my 9th session being in and around this process in the General Assembly. In every election cycle, we find new things that we can update and modernize, we can tighten. I think that's an opportunity for us to continue to take that into consideration this session. Certainly there's those that would go all kinds of different angles. I think I want to make sure the conversation is really centered around a modernization, a continued opportunity to analyze what we've done and how we can do it even better. Thank you all very much. Look forward to working with you during the coming days and weeks and months in this session. Thank you.